Welcome back, everyone, for one last time to Milliken Field here in Throwtown, Ramona for the 2026 Ramona World Invitational, which officially wrapped up about 45 minutes to an hour ago over there with the C and D flights of the men's discus. Low-key, the wind ended up being a little better today than it was yesterday, which is funny because raining this morning. The A and B flights of the men's discus were moved to yesterday out of an extreme amount of caution, which ended up being slightly unnecessary. And I mean, you know, if they would have been going today, we might have seen 76. But anyway, still some incredible throws across the whole weekend. Some incredible throws today, which we'll get to in a bit. But this video, instead of, there wasn't as much action today as there were the first couple days, so instead of a normal kind of recap, this is more just general takeaways from this meet in 2026. And so, yeah, I think the first thing we have to kind of start with is just 75.56 is really, really impressive, and that's really, really far. It's... Mikolas kind of made it a Mikolas Alekna, by the way, in case you guys are wondering. Hope that pec is feeling better, Mikolas. He kind of made it just an assumption that you come to Ramona, you get a really good thrower, bring them to Ramona, they're going to break the world record. But clearly we saw this week it's a little harder to do that than it appears. And I think it's really impressive for Mikolas because, Mikolas has only competed here in 2 competitions. He's taken 12 throws here, and Maddie Denny has taken 36 throws. Maddie's competed 3 times as much as Mikolas has here, and Maddie is every bit the thrower that Mikolas is. He's put out some really good marks here and away from Ramona. Maddie is insanely good, and he's still at his very best about a meter short of Mikolas. Mikolas still has 2 throws better than Maddie's best throw. We saw Christian Che compete, I think, 4 times here throughout the last couple weeks, might be 5 even. And his best throw was barely a PB at 72.66, I think, is what he threw on Thursday. And so that really enforces just how impressive 75.56 is. It's not a given that you take one of the very best discus throwers in the world, plop them here, and produce a world record. So it's a shame that Mikolas wasn't here to be able to try and earn another one of those big rock plaques he's got over there for back-to-back world records. But hopefully we'll see him back here in 2027. Now, some takeaways from the athletes that actually were competing here. And I guess I'll start with kind of hinting at the action from today, and that is the German men's discus group might be the deepest group of throwers in the entire world. I mean, American men's shot putters are up there, and American women's hammer throwers are up there. But Thursday night, you saw Steven Richter go 74 meters, and then yesterday he went 72.47 or something like that, 72 mid, and he's 23. And then today, you saw Marius Kargas, the 2022 World Junior Champion, go 69.47 to win the C flight here. Coming into this weekend, Marius's PB sat at a cool 64.11, and this is a guy clearly ridiculously talented, World Junior Champion in 2022, ahead of his fellow German Mika Sosna, who threw 70 meters here last year in Ramona. I'm pretty sure Mika threw 70 twice here last year on the Thursday and the Sunday competitions. But we've known he's super talented, but he just hasn't quite been able to put it together. He said he wasn't super surprised. The distances he's been seeing in training, he said, were definitely kind of indicative of 67, high 60s. And so 69, catching a good wind like this, is definitely kind of in his realm of expectation. But he threw a little PB on Thursday, 64.8, I think. And then today just goes crazy. 66 in round 2, and then 68 in round 4. and then 66 or 69.47 in round 6 on the last throw of the entire weekend. So he closed this thing out absolutely incredibly, almost 5.5 meters tacked onto his PB over the course of one weekend. That's what makes this place so special. And so now when you look at German men's discus throwing as a whole, Steven Richter, Marius Kargas, who we saw here this weekend, but then you've also got the aforementioned Mika Sosna, who was a world finalist last year. I think he finished 10th in that rainy final in Tokyo. Henrik Jansson, who was another world finalist from Tokyo last year. Clemens Prüfer, who threw 71 meters here last year. Daniel Jasinski is a really strong thrower as well. Like, they've got 6 absolutely incredible guys that are going to be fighting for 3 spots in the European Championships. They go top 2 at the German Championships and then 1 discretionary spot. So it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how this shakes out. I think last year, Marius was 6th out of that group at German Championships, throwing like 61.79, I think is what the mark was, something between 61 and 62. And clearly he's showing he's not willing to settle for something like that again this year. And that's just really going to elevate the level of that competition as a whole. And so I'm super excited to kind of keep track of, because these guys, I mean, the Germans, a lot of times they just compete within Germany, and they'll be going head to head to head to head to head to head, like 3 or 4 times throughout the season before we get to German Championships, hopefully. So that is going to be something that is very, very exciting to watch. On the women's discus side, I mean, I think it's really cool to see sort of a resiliency from Val Sion that we haven't necessarily had to see in the last 2.5 years since she lost in Budapest. She's kind of just been trouncing her way through every competition. There were a couple close diamond leagues last year that she was able to pull out, but Thursday we actually see her lose for the first time, breaking a 30 competition win streak, and then she comes right back out and goes 73-10 on Saturday. When I was talking with her afterwards, she was saying a big part of that was mindset, because Thursday she was coming in, the mindset, throw as far as possible. Saturday when she was coming in, the mindset was much more to simply compete, because, you know, she had seen how well Jorinda van Klinken and Alida van Dalen and everyone else had thrown on Thursday. And so she was really, that was kind of the mindset, that loss, in a way, was kind of the mindset shift she needed to really dial back in and do exactly what she needed to do in that ring over there to take the win. So very exciting to see that kind of resilience from Val, but you can't really do anything to understate, or you cannot understate how impressive what Jorinda and Alida did this weekend was. Both of them, for Jorinda, her best throw since 2021 on Thursday. Alida throws a PB on Thursday. They come back on Saturday. Jorinda throws a PB and a Dutch national record, almost 71 meters. Alida throws another huge PB, throws 69.17. And those two are both still very young in discus terms. I mean, if you think about the fact that we see Melina Robert-Michon throwing almost 66 meters, they're basically toddlers. I mean, Melina was an Olympian before Alida was born, I think. And now they're going head to head here in Ramona. That's so insane to think about. But yeah, so Alida's 24, I think Jorinda's 26, maybe 27. And they both put out these huge marks. For Jorinda, I think this might be a little bit of like a kind of mental breakthrough, because that PB had stood for such a long time. And she had been just hammering away at it, like building and getting closer to that every year. But she hadn't really had the opportunity or the conditions like this to really, truly attack that mark. And she comes out here yesterday and puts 3 throws over 70, including 2 over her previous PB, which sat at 70.22. So I'm very excited to see what's in store for Jorinda and Alida as well. I mean, this is a huge breakthrough performance. And Alida's PB previously was at Ramona, but it was like 66.61, I think. But she had thrown 65 65 high, I believe, away from Ramona. So there wasn't that big of a discrepancy between her Ramona windy PB and like her normal PB. Like she threw 65 at the Paris Diamond League in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So she's now throwing 69 in Ramona in her season opener. It is so exciting to think about where that means she could end up by the time this season wraps up. In the shot put, I really think Roger Steen is in for a big year. I mean, opening, we saw what he did this indoor season. Incredible stuff. But opening up this well, when, like I talked about yesterday, he's still in a pretty heavy lifting cycle. He was talking with Joe Frontier and Dan McQuaid yesterday, and was telling a story about Wednesday when he was doing his pre-meet here. He took a throw that I think he said was somewhere around like 73 feet, and he called his coach and was like, and his coach asked him how far that throw was. Roger told him, and his coach was like, "You're not lifting heavy enough then if you're throwing that far." So when they do really kind of start getting towards that peak shape for championship meets like USA's and leading into the kind of the peak of the Diamond League season, if Roger can connect on his technique there, that's going to be exciting to see. And Chase Jackson, I mean, 2013 when this was very last minute, she said. She wasn't planning on opening until the China Diamond Leagues, which are about 6 more weeks from now. And so she moved up her timetable a ton on very short notice and still through 2013. I mean, we saw what she did at US Indoors, going 20:44, I think is what she threw there, which was an indoor PB by a pretty significant margin. Obviously, we know she came closer to 21 meters than anyone in the last 14 years had last year. So yeah, it's the same way that I talk about like Alita and Yorinda and Rod. I mean, this is so many people's openers, and it's just so I've said it like 6 times, but it's so exciting to think about where this season could end up, especially because, you know, this is a season, there's not a typical world championships. But there are lots of different kinds of championships. You've got world ultimates for the men's hammer and then men's and women's jav. You've got Europeans, you've got Commonwealth Games. So for some of these people, there's still, unfortunately, really the Americans are kind of the only ones that don't really have anything that significant. But it's interesting to think about how, despite the fact that there's not necessarily a true crescendo to the season in a lot of ways, it looks like we're still building up for a really ridiculously good year of throws. And Chase, I'm still a little upset that in Tokyo you told me we might not see you this year, and now you're coming out to have one. I'm not upset, because obviously I'm very glad that you've decided to compete this year and are competing so well, but I feel like such a fool for believing you in that mix zone in Tokyo. But alas. Friday night's action with the women's hammer. Obviously, there's not really any super interesting takeaways you can draw from Cameron Rogers just being so unbelievably good. But for Rachel Richardson, I talked about this a little both in my interview with Rachel and on my recap from Friday night. She's opened her season with 6 marks over 74 and only 3 fouls across her first 2 competitions. And if you followed Rachel last year, you know how big of an issue foul trouble was for her, and just kind of inconsistency popping up in not so great moments. And, you know, she acknowledged in the interview, like when I brought this up to her, she was like, I know every competition isn't going to be 78 or 76 high like she threw in Tucson 2 weeks ago at the USATF Winter Long Throws Nationals. But to have 2 meets like that back-to-back to start the season is setting a really strong tone. And Rachel is also still pretty young. I mean, she's a couple years younger than Brooke and Janae and Deanna Price. And with the huge leap we saw from her last year, going from 74 meters to consistently well over 75, into the 76s, 77s, obviously 78, 80 here in her opener last year, and then was able to make the U.S. team. it's exciting to think about what the continued growth of Rachel can look like. And I think the first couple...
Sorry.
Are we okay? Can we lock in a little bit? I forget what I was saying. Like I was talking about with Alita and Yorinda, Rachel is still pretty young by thrower standards. I mean, she's a couple years younger than Brooke and Janae and Deanna. And when you look at just the leap she took last year, going from 74s in 2022 or in 2024 up to opening at 78.80, right there a few feet behind me, going over 77, over 76, pretty, not necessarily consistent meet to meet, but she did it more than once, proved that her opener here wasn't a fluke. And so seeing that leap this year, and then if she can just find that consistency to follow it, which the early returns from this season look really good for that, it's hard to predict where exactly Rachel could end up, even just by the end of this season, because the sky is the absolute limit. So those are just a few quick takeaways from some of the biggest performances from this weekend. It was, I mean, top to bottom, a really good day. I didn't even mention the fact that Curtis Thompson threw 85 meters. Okay, I'll throw in a bonus takeaway here. Curtis Thompson threw 85 meters in not perfect conditions here, kind of a bit far from it. And it's cool to see just kind of the confidence building with Curtis. Like, I really do think getting that medal on that global stage after so many times there, and so many big early season throws, but he hadn't necessarily been able to translate that to crunch time. I think getting that medal and finally getting that kind of validation. I mean, he won NACAX too. Like, that's not obviously as prestigious of a competition as Worlds, but that's an international title. So it's really cool to see the way that I think that has kind of translated into the early parts of the season. Also cool to see him repping Adidas now, because it's always a great day when throwers actually get sponsored. Shout out to Yorinda and Nike as well. Yeah, but I mean, this was kind of I think the opener that we wanted. We'll kind of throw out 74.5 or whatever he ended up at Winter Long Throws Nationals, and we'll take 85.5 as his real opener. And yeah, Jav is one of the ones, thankfully, in the World Ultimate Championships. So Curtis has, and that's a tough one because it goes more off world rankings, and so Curtis is really going to need to kind of bump those marks up. Hopefully we'll get into some diamond leagues, which as a world medalist and now consistently throwing in the mid 80s and the high 80s, hopefully that should be a bit easier for him. But yeah, it's same thing. I feel like all of these takeaways are just, I'm excited to see these people's seasons, but there's a reason. I'm excited to see what Curtis does this season, and I'm not afraid to say it. But yeah, so incredible weekend all around. Huge hat tip to Caleb Seal and Don Milliken here. The brains behind this place. It's a wonderful place to be. It's a really fun meet to be at. Audrey and I absolutely love coming to this one. Audrey crushed it shooting for USATF this weekend, so check out their pages for some more of her content, and we've got a lot of her pictures as well on the Paulie Throws Instagram page. We've got interviews there. A lot of interviews I have on the Throws University live streams, so go back and check those out to watch some really far throws with some really great commentary from Joe Frontier and Dan McQuaid, and then I pop in every once in a while and talk to some really cool far throwers. Andrew Saylor and his team with, I'm blanking on what they call themselves right now. But Andrew is the best. It was such a cool opportunity to be on that stream. And the X-Force, I believe, is what's on the back of their shirts. They absolutely crushed it this weekend. What a great time at the 2026 Ramona World Invitational. So special to be here. And hopefully we'll be back next year, and hopefully we'll see some even bigger throws.
What's next for you, Paul?
Next for me, going home, back to Gainesville, we got Tom Jones on deck. That'll be fun. And we're kind of trying to build out a meet schedule right now. I think Tom Jones for sure. Planning on going to SEC Outdoors in Auburn the second weekend of May. Gotta watch Tarek close out like the most ridiculous SEC career you could ever imagine. Then what else do we got? NCAAs most likely, New Balance Outdoor Nationals, potentially USAs. It's a good lineup we've got coming up. I'm excited. Hopefully we'll add some more throws in there as well. Also, the Ed Murphy Classic in Memphis. Some more details on that coming soon, but there's another little type of meet that'll be there for those of you that are aware, and excited to be back at one of those ones. But yeah, it's not much set in stone right now, but a pretty good idea of where we'll be going. So that'll be a lot of fun. Thanks again for everyone tuning in and appreciating all the work from Ramona this weekend. It was a lot of fun. Paulie Throws on Instagram, P. Hoff Mahoney on Twitter. Please like and subscribe. Follow the Paulie Throws podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and rate it. That would be great. And on Apple Podcasts, could you review it? Because right now, the only review I have on Apple Podcasts is complaining about how much I was yawning on my live streams in Tokyo. And so I'd really love to push that one down. It's still a 5-star review. They just were complaining about my yawning, which is justified. But also I would appreciate if there were some more productive words in there. Whoever left that review, I still appreciate you, and I do acknowledge the fact that the yawning was quite absurd sometimes in Tokyo. Thankfully, less yawning on these recaps, but that is all I've got for you. Thank you to Audrey Allen for holding the Ronin for all of these recaps. Like I said, USATF for a lot of her work, and she designed our cool new graphics that are on the Paulie Throws page for this weekend, which I think are really fun. And just overall, did an absolute great job of being a photographer and a videographer and a girlfriend, as always, because she's the best. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.